The wait for the 5-star Skyranger is finally over, and now we've got Tippi. Skyrangers by themselves are a very practical class, while Tippi herself can feel a bit unwieldy to most, having a somewhat less than standard kit. Personally though, I disagree that she's straight up worse than her 4-star counterpart. I think she's got a clear place as a kind of side grade to the more standard contrail, and hopefully, I can get a bit of that across.
The stage is set. Now, let's see how everyone performs.
Skyranger specialists are melee operators, with the same range as instructors and agents. They have balanced stat lines and are pretty decent for the DP needed to deploy, making them easy to use, cost-efficient utility that's fairly helpful even off skill. Their attack interval is a bit slower than some operators at 1.5. Skyrangers specialize in taking off. When taking off, a Skyranger gains a kind of pseudo-camouflage, where they can't be targeted by ground enemies. In this state, Skyrangers have the ability to block 2 aerial enemies, including low-altitude enemies, and can still hit both aerial and ground enemies as normal. It goes without saying that this class is pretty solid, having anti-air offense, block manipulation, and the ability to just ignore any enemies on the ground and sit in relative safety while assisting and getting them out of the way. Tippi's talent gives her the ability to dodge the next physical or arts attack if she hasn't been attacked for 9 seconds. This changes to 8 seconds with potential 5. It's definitely an interesting one. On one hand, there's less practicality with this kind of talent, but it can have a degree of use on maps with decent spacing between waves, and works very well with skill 2, which I'll of course be talking about in a bit. If I had worse judgment, I'd have pulled until potential 5 so I could enjoy the talent boost, but it already took me 50 pulls to get her in the first place, so I just settled for its base level. Anyway, Tippi's skill 1 at Mastery 3 sees her immediately take off, gives her an increase to her range, and grants her an additional 100% attack. It has a charge cost of 20 and lasts for 40 seconds. Level to 80 without potential boost, this is doing 1570 per hit. With potential, this is 1620. In a skill cycle, this is putting out over 40,000 damage. Real simple. You have a great amount of uptime for a short 20 seconds to be able to just ignore ground enemies and support from above. Comparing her to Contrail, there are a few benefits and trade-offs that come with this version of a Skyranger skill 1. First, Tippi wins out here when looking at damage. Both of these skills last for 40 seconds at Mastery 3. With an interval of 1.5, we see around 26 hits in a skill cycle. This gives us a difference of around 2700 in comparing damage output. Realistically though, the much easier to obtain Purchase Certificate 4-star is probably going to have potentials, whereas the Gacha 5-star is a decent bit harder to have this be the case for. So it might be more sensible to compare the difference between Contrail with potential and Tippi without, which does close the gap a bit with a difference of 1400. Contrail also has an innate dodge of 60% on her skill 1 that makes it feasible to put her in a position where she can immediately challenge certain dangerous aerial enemies and keep herself alive. Tippi, by comparison, needs to be in a bit of a safer spot and isn't ready to go right away. Particular enemies that can be dealt with alone using Contrail will usually need to have a bit of support thrown in when it comes to Tippi. Either that or relying on her natural resilience to keep her alive. On the brighter side for Tippi, she doesn't have to redeploy to have access to skill 1 again. Makes her easier to maneuver around and plan for if you know how a map goes, without having to retreat for a minute that you may not have. But that's just her very simple skill 1. In my experiences, this one isn't seeing use in most situations when there's something that's generally better. Skill 2 is an automatic skill that activates on reaction to incoming damage. Tippi dodges the next instance of incoming damage if it's physical or arts, and immediately takes off. Otherwise, she still takes a hit before taking off. For the skill's duration, she gains ambusher range, an additional 50% attack, and a single target triple strike. This is, understandably, a skill that tends to raise some eyebrows. It generally gets compared immediately to Contrail skill 2, which outdamages it if we're looking at damage per hit, and lacks multi-target capability and the ability to slow enemies. And most importantly, it isn't directly in the player's control. Those wanting Tippi to block at a certain time may find this one to be a bit frustrating to use. However, I think that those criticisms tend to miss the point of this skill. Things like Tippi blocking enemies shouldn't be what's being focused on with skill 2. Regarding damage being dealt, Tippi's skill 2 is oriented for singular targets. In crowd control situations, she's of course not going to be outperforming Contrail. But that makes sense. The two occupy very different roles, and as such have very different strengths. Contrail offers sustained crowd control, whereas Tippi is having a better showing when the focus is more on bursting a stronger target down. As a quick example, if we're looking at a single target scenario, the place you prefer Tippi to be in, Tippi is dealing around 35,000 damage to a target in 15 seconds. Comparatively, Contrail is dealing over 14,000 damage in the same amount of time, and over 28,000 over the course of her skill, in which time Tippi is already going for a second cycle. I'm not trying to say that one is the better Skyranger here, just that they have their respective places they do best in. Tippi's skill 2 also has a greater focus on her being able to jump in and out of danger. It has an SP cost of 10, after all, and it synergizes remarkably well with her talent, ensuring she'll have a stock of dodge ready to go when she's back on the ground that'll usually give her time that she needs to safely get back in the air, avoid danger, and provide offensive support again. There's a reason she has that survival tag on her operator page. I think that the constant on and off nature of this skill is also the reason she's given ambusher range for its duration. It feels more like you're meant to have enemies attack and pass her, while someone behind her or to her side takes care of holding enemies directly, while receiving fire support. It's particularly good for intermittent waves of aerial enemies as well, as it'll be ready pretty much whenever you need it going off. When used this way, there's much less friction than trying to get her to function in a fashion she just isn't designed for, or solely as a drone attacker that I don't have control over. This isn't all to say that Tippi is actually crazy good, and that everyone is sleeping on the strongest 5-star of all time or something, or that I know exactly what was intended when her kit was designed. I mean, you're looking at a guy who likes to clear maps like this sometimes. Yes, but I do think that her good points end up being ignored or dismissed just because she doesn't feel immediately practical when you throw her down, and it's a bit unfortunate. There is something here, and it's not useless. Mastery for Skill 1 is going to give you a faster start, more damage, and a longer duration. It's nice, but probably not necessary in most places. Skill 2, in my opinion, benefits a lot more. You start initially with half of the SP cost covered on deployment, get more damage, and most importantly, lower the activation cost from 13 to 10 seconds. The less time Tippi can spend sitting on the ground is going to directly translate to more damage dealt and less damage taken. It also makes the dodge from her talent feel more impactful, as it has a shorter amount of time it has to cover for Tippi before she can go back to doing what she does best. Newer class, no module. I actually have no idea what I'd want the general Skyranger module effect to be. For Tippi specifically though, if it either lowered her talent charge time by another second, or let her stack another dodge for later, that would be enough for me. Initially seeing Tippi's kit on paper, I wasn't sure what to think. A time-based dodge and reactive skill 2 had me wondering how or if she was going to work. But it does work. Like any operator, she can't shine in every single situation, and might sometimes need a bit of planning and effort to make things work. But she's not bad at all. And I mean, come on, look at that smile. Are you really gonna look me in the eye and say there's nothing good about her?